In this lunchtime news broadcast, we bring you the latest news, both local and international, ranging from current affairs, community stories, sports, and economic news. Here are the news headlines. Amupanda guns for presidency. More than 2,000 scramble for 6 jobs. Judge turns down jailed ex-MP's release bid. I am Glenara Shipura, and this is NMH at 1. Manfred Links has just been found guilty of the murder of his girlfriend, the late Michelle Rolfe, in the High Court in Windhoek. Links in 2020 poured petrol over Rolfe and set fire to her at Adamsvlei. Judge Chrissy Liebenberg ruled that Links should have foreseen that the incident would have led to her death. Links was also found guilty on a charge of attempted murder on their daughter, who was 13 months old at the time of the incident. Remember to engage with these stories on our social media throughout the broadcast. Visual news coming up after the break.
I think Namco is changing the game.
The service at Namco is amazing.
Fast and friendly.
Always ready to cater to you.
Use them often when we do our trips.
Namco is the one.
Let's take a look at our visual news. President Hage Geingob has asked that SWAPO party members throw their weight behind party Vice President Netubong Ndaitwah in the run-up to the 2024 presidential and national elections, saying the time for factions is over. Oneuptwo reports.
Time is not here yet. The appropriate time to properly introduce and we campaign because it's SWAPO. There are a lot of different states. It's SWAPO and the country. So I always say that when you process the systems and institutions, it's not an individual. The integration of our party, our country, and then we have a person who will lead us, supported by all of us. Whether you are opposed to, that's not true. It's politics, it's democracy. You have a right to oppose, disagree, condemn a person, but when that person is elected, that's why I kept on saying, don't take the person, take the ball. When the game is over, you kick the ball away, and what's the soccer? What's the boxing? The guy is beaten up by his congratulations. So when that is over, it's over. So I hope we don't going to have factions, this group or that group from now on. But I've been hearing it still. It is over. We have candidates elected. When time comes, we will properly campaign for her. We will do the campaign, some of us, so that she is elected on behalf of SWAPO. When that time comes.
SWAPO Party Vice President Netubong Ndaitwah warned the people of Onoshoko village in Okaku constituency, Oshana region, not to make a mistake and take power away from the ruling party, which she said has brought chaos in the capital city. She was speaking at the party's rally, where she encouraged the party's supporters and sympathizers to make sure they vote for the party's candidate, Philippus Twakonjele. Toyemo Haidula reports.
Oshilonga stolongo, otashito ndubo, mekota mangolo SWAPO, okatendi foko numba no konumba. Derite kuti format. Shoshone kucha, vote SWAPO candidate because they are based or their anger on a strong foundation of SWAPO party. Inatu ningenyo mapuko hairwa o mafipolongo na hiari steke. O bakarimo boshirando pangelo shavenduka O vai fero machine pedo. Depende botar em baquatola. O bacalimo vociando chavenduca. O vai fero machine pedo. Esse. O volta da vó. Vedi diapute diku fero ko swapo. Teke dianja. Kobanu eno makanga meno. Vai venduka. Osirando pangelo. Omo munon tumba we pangelo. Omo vanu va apute apitremo venduka. Kamune pangelo comrades. Otola sai pininga mokaku. Otola sai pininga mokaku. Onjuete kujanova kale muomo venduka. Iteke siete que la vaji. Ite siete que la vaji. Ovalalamo. Munyotrimo mujo hairo. Oneini o venduka. Oneini mamwene takutiwa. O venduka ya dome. Oneini o dulaja ko kale moka jago ike bele minutina diano kolongo. O venduka ya jome. Kapenanu okufiturula o menino. Shashi. Ngono vedikufa ko kongudu. Ino makanga meno. O vedikufa ko. Vai veri muju. Aski te shininga. Ai kuombere ki te shininga ali modrate iyo maololote. Shosho.
When the irrigation scheme was first conceived, money was readily available, but then the project was stopped as financial resources dwindled. More on this in the newspaper review segment after the break.
I usually fill up about 2 tanks a week. A tank of fuel cost me about 140 to 150 Namibian dollars. I was very fortunate that a couple of my friends and I went to Tsumeb for the day, slept over, and then we rode back the next day. I found the service at the NAMCO service stations to be quite fast and friendly, which is really nice, especially when we're on the open road and we want to get to our next destination. What makes me proud Namibian is the fact that we've got all these lovely wide open spaces. And although we are from all different backgrounds, we can all get together and we can have a great time.
Let's take a look at what the lead stories are in Namibia's daily newspapers. Starting off with the Namibian Sun, which reports that government will have to pump in an additional 2 billion Namibian dollars needed to finalize the Nakatale irrigations project, Agriculture Minister Carl Schleitwein said last week. Schleitwein said this at a stakeholder engagement in Keetmanshoop regarding the development plans for the Nakatale Dam project. He said when the project was started, money was readily available, but we were stopped in our tracks because we ran out of money. The minister added that at this stage, money is not yet readily available, but we believe the project is too important to be stopped by that. On the paper's page 3, the Namibia Students Financial Assistance Fund last week said, although it's still in the process of consolidating all recoveries for the financial year 2022 to 2023, there is an improvement in the amount recovered this year compared to the previous years. The fund said the public will be informed in detail by April. An interest amnesty was put in place on the 1st of June 2022 and will lapse on the 30th of June this year. Take the opportunity, according to NASFA's Chief of Human Capital, Olavi Hamwele, defaulters should get ready to make final repayment before the deadline, as interest will start accumulating as of the 1st of July. He said all repayment modalities were set in place and a number of initiatives were undertaken to encourage post-beneficiaries to take advantage of the amnesty and repay. Republican reports that leaders of the Okahanja Concern Group will hear from the Namibian Police Nampol Regional Office today if they will get their permission to air their grievances in the capital. Residents of these towns' informal settlements plan to get help for a second time to call on the Minister of Urban and Rural Development hangs from the response of the police. Police officers, however, warned if they proceed with the protest without proof that they have paid the required $450 million, they may end up behind bars. The group plans to go by bus this coming Thursday to travel to the capital city to go to the ministry's main office. They also called on the minister and the Prime Minister's office last year to approach, but nothing happened. On page 3, SWAPO members of Parliament Toby Amupanda says while Namibia's operational expenditure is high, it should not be reason for the government to limit the public workforce, saying government spending should equate the growth in the population. Amupanda made the remarks following the tabling of the budget last week by Finance Minister Ipumbushimi. I am not from the school of thought which advocates for the reduction of the workforce in the public service because population growth has gone up, urbanization is increasing, youth population growth has gone up, the demand for better roads, hospitals and schools has gone up, and therefore requiring more people to service such activities, Amupanda said. Allgemeine Zeitung reports the Chief Justice George Coleman, in his ruling last Thursday, declared a portion of Section 83 of the 1975 Conservation Ordinance unconstitutional and invalid, and upheld a previous preliminary injunction according to which the Nankuse Foundation endangered birds previously protected by the Rare and Endangered Species Trust. The Rare and Endangered Species Trust was allowed to take over birds that were previously kept by the REST. This was mainly about 3 Cape vultures, which are considered the most endangered vulture species in Namibia. A pair made headlines last year when they hatched the vulture phoenix in captivity. On page 3, as Namibia eagerly anticipates its partnership with Botswana to co-host the Africa Cup of Nations in 2027, the country's national soccer venue, Independence Stadium, remains in ruins. This is despite a budget of $50 million allocated last year towards renovations of the facility that has become only fit to host political events. The allocation was $48 million less than the $98 million required to restore the stadium to its original state. Football fanatics now fear that the state of the stadium could be a turn-off for the Confederation of African Football, which is expected to announce the successful bid soon. We continue with the newspaper review after the break.
I usually don't drive this car around. It's a standing baby. I fill up my car for 850, which that gave me a full tank. I used to use this car between Rebot and Windhoek. Yeah, once you reach home in Rebot, it's almost a half tank. It's from Windhoek to Ketmas. That is the longest I have driven with this baby. I think NAMCO is changing the game because their service is very organized, clean. Even their takeaway department, NAMCO is the one. There is no country like Namibia. Namibia is a very beautiful country. That's why I'm part of it.
We continue with our newspaper review. The Namibian newspaper reports that many have been left shell-shocked after 2,000 unemployed youth from Windhoek flocked to a local hang spot to submit their curricula vitae to be considered for 16 advertised positions. The Temperature Lounge and Restaurant in Windhoek recently advertised 16 posts, including waiters, waitresses, chefs, bartenders, and cleaners to add to their current 48 employees. The lounge manager, Rosa Shikoha, said the turnout of job seekers was a shock as the business did not expect the advert to attract many people. Shikoha said although the number of vacant posts was not indicated in the advert, it said that the majority of the applicants are youth, which means the unemployment rate is extremely high. On page 3, former National Assembly member Geoffrey Mwilima, who is serving a jail term over his involvement in a plot to secede the Zambezi region from Namibia, has failed in his last bid to get a court order for his release from prison. In a judgment delivered in the Windhoek High Court on Friday, Judge Marlene Tomasi dismissed an application by Mwilima in which he asked the court to direct the Minister of Home Affairs, Immigration, Safety and Security to authorize his release within 12 hours after the court's order. Fisheries Minister Derek Claassen says there are no new jobs in the fishing industry unless new jobs in the fishing industry are built or new vessels are bought in industry players. New Era reports Claassen was speaking at the official opening of the Merlus Group's new factory known as Merlus Commemorant Fishing at Walvis Bay on Friday. Merlus exports about 13,000 metric tons of high value-added wet fish, mainly hake, to European markets. The company constructed a new wet fish processing factory to the tune of $70 million to acquire a wet fish trawler vessel. On page 3, ambitious social injustice activist Job Amupanda yesterday announced his intention to contest for the highest office in the land when Namibia heads to the polls in November 2024. The announcement was made through the unveiling of several billboards in Windhoek and Ondangwa, while several were being put up in the coastal towns of Walvis Bay and Swakopmund. At 36 then, Amupanda will be the youngest presidential candidate if all goes according to his plan. His announcement is part of a bigger scheme with the affirmative repositioning also in the process of registering as a political party with the Electoral Commission of Namibia. Market Watch informs that Namibia's ports have experienced a significant increase in both container exports and imports of various commodities. One of the most impressive commodities is charcoal, which has shown a 39% increase in volume due to high demand in European markets. Copper exports have also experienced a 16% increase due to the benefits of the containerization, such as improved security, reduced cargo damage, and faster turnaround times. Other commodities that have seen growth in export volumes include frozen fish, frozen meat, bagged salt, wooden products, and steel, which have seen an impressive 178% increase due to the high demand in key markets. Orex maintains positive interim momentum. More on this story in economic news.
Active Kids is an initiative under the MyZone brand that aims to provide exciting and easy activities and fun stories. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact zone@synergy.com.na. Active Kids, where we actively invest in your future.
Getting into our economic news, locally listed Orex Properties maintained its positive momentum in financial and operational performance for the 6 months ending 31 December 2022, resulting in rental income increasing by 10.8% to $175 million compared to 2.9% reported in the same half year in 2021. Vacancies were contained to a minimum of 6.1% against the 5.9% in the same 6 months in 2021. We are encouraged by the strong first 6 months performance, during which rental revisions amounted to 7% as of June 2022, 7.3%, following tenant collections averaging 104% December 2021, 91%, said Orex CEO Ben Joster. Let's take a look at our economic indicators. $1 US trades for $18.20. Most of the stock prices on the Namibia Stock Exchange, except for NRIP, Nictus Holdings, Namibia, Trustco Group Holdings, overall index is down by 3.82%, while the local index went up by 0.31%. Gold is valued at $1,861 US, while Brent crude oil is valued at $83 US.14 per barrel. 30 migrants missing in shipwreck off Libya. Charity blames Italy. Don't miss news from Africa here on NMH at 1. "30 people are missing and 17 were rescued in the central Mediterranean on Sunday after the boat in which they were traveling from Libya capsized in bad weather," Italy's Coast Guard said. The tragedy comes just weeks after a 23 February shipwreck near the southern region of Calabria, in which at least 79 died. Alarm Phone, a charity that picks up calls from migrant vessels in distress, assumed the 30 people were dead and blamed Italy for not sending its coastal guard, despite being repeatedly alerted on Saturday that the boat was in trouble. Clearly, the Italian authorities were trying to avoid that the people would be brought to Italy, delaying intervention so that the so-called Libyan Coast Guard would arrive and forcibly return people to Libya, it said in a statement late on Sunday. However, Italy's Coast Guard said the capsizing occurred outside the Italian search and rescue area, and Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said Rome was doing all it could to avoid shipwrecks. "We have always argued that it's necessary to stop the departures of unseaworthy vessels," he told Masegaro Daily on Monday. It seems to him that everything that their Coast Guard, Navy and Finance Police are doing is to be praised. He added that Rome and the European Commission were supplying Libya with more patrol boats. Rescue operations were ongoing late on Sunday, supported by merchant ships and aerial support by the U.S. border agency Frontex, while 2 further merchant vessels were en route to the area, the Coast Guard said in a statement. As extremist violence in West Africa's Sahel region spreads south towards coastal states, the United States military has launched its annual military training exercise aimed at helping armies contain the jihadi threat. Soldiers from several African countries are being trained in counterinsurgency tactics as part of the annual U.S.-led exercise known as Flintlock, which began this week. Some 1,300 military personnel from 29 countries are training in Ghana and Ivory Coast amid surging jihadi violence linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group that's killed thousands, displaced millions, and plunged countries into crises. While most of the extremist activity is concentrated in West Africa's inland Sahel region in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, the violence is rapidly spreading to coastal states like Ghana, which is experiencing an upsurge in attacks by unidentified groups which could have links to jihadis. Northern Ghana had just one violent incident connected to an unidentified armed group in 2021, but that figure rose dramatically to 19 in 2022, according to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. This year's U.S. Flintlock, a 2-week event, is taking place amid growing anti-French sentiment in West Africa. Mali and Burkina Faso have ended their military cooperation with France, complaining that the French military presence over several years has done little to stem the growth of jihadi violence. Do stay tuned for international news coming to you shortly. U.S. officials stopped hundreds of mostly Venezuelan migrants entering the country from Mexico on Sunday after a large group broke through Mexican lines to demand asylum in the U.S., only to be thwarted by barbed wire, barriers, and shields. Frustrated with problems securing appointments to seek asylum using a new U.S. government app, the migrants gathered at the frontier in the Mexican border city of Ciudad, but could not breach the crossing connecting the two countries. Many of the migrants had small children with them. At one point, some migrants attempted to hurl an orange plastic barrier at the U.S. line. Some people said pepper spray was deployed to repel them. "Please, we just want to get in so we can help our families," said Camila Paz, an 18-year-old Venezuelan, sobbing heavily. "So I can have a future and help my family." Neither U.S. Customs and Border Protection nor the Mexican government's National Migration Authority immediately replied to requests for comment. After some pushing and shoving with the officials, the crowd of migrants eventually withdrew, with some heading down to the banks of the Rio Grande, where they were monitored by U.S. immigration officials arrayed on the other side. Many migrants have become fed up with the asylum process since the Biden administration made an app called CPBD unavailable to them that was meant to streamline applications. Do stay tuned for the local sports news after the break.
Flex is your health and fitness show that focuses on the health of the mind, body, and spirit. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact zone@synergy.com.na.
Let's take a look at the local sports news. Cricket Namibia's T20 Premier League concluded with a memorable final on Sunday afternoon as Imperial Wanderers narrowly won a low-scoring match against AMH Motors Windhoek High School Old Boys after Wanderers had won the toss and elected to bat first. They were restricted to just 90 runs, with Michao Dupree's top scoring with 29. Old Boys locked on course when opener Marlon Kruger scored 34 and while Gerhard Erasmus was still at the crease. But when he was dismissed for 25, the Wanderers spinners applied pressure along with a highly alert fielding performance. In Swakopmund, the favourites lived up to their billing as the Racing Marathon returned to live action after 2 years of only being presented as a virtual race. A record number of more than 800 runners competed in the 42 kilometers, 21 kilometers, and a 10-kilometer distances. Former Olympic qualifier Thomas Reinhold comfortably won the Racing Marathon in 2 hours, 14 minutes ahead of Kefas Kanjashili. Let's take a look at our international sports news. Defending champions, the Pumas have made it very clear that they want more than just the Currie Cup to participate in. Coach Jimmy Stonehouse's men articulated that wish in the loudest way possible with a magnificent 63-15 victory over the Bulls at Loftus Versfeld on Sunday afternoon. There could be no quibbling over the standard of the opposition the Pumas faced, as the Bulls boasted 13 players in their 23 who had played in the United Rugby Championship the previous weekend. The eventful winning margin provides telling ammunition for the Pumas' case of demanding international competition. Kim Lecourt of Mauritius won her 4th title overall and her 3rd consecutively when she won the Cape Town Cycle Tour on Sunday morning. The Mauritanian narrowly beat Namibia's Vera Lusa in a sprint finish after a closely fought race over 79 kilometers. In the men's race, it was an all-South African affair as Chris Joste held off the challenge of Andries Nagirini and Giadien Terlouw. Lecourt and Lusa will be teammates at the upcoming Absa Cape Epic Mountain Bike Tour over 8 days, starting on Sunday the 19th of March. We'll be taking a look at the highlights shortly.
In Business 7, you get news on current economic, financial, and business matters in Namibia. The weekly show features interviews with experts and in-depth analysis of burning issues in a way that caters for ordinary Namibians and business connoisseurs alike. For news-related or advertising queries, please contact b7@synergy.com.na.
Let's take a look at the news highlights from today's broadcast. 30 people are missing and 17 were rescued in the central Mediterranean on Sunday after the boat in which they were traveling from Libya capsized in bad weather, Italy's Coast Guard said. U.S. officials stopped hundreds of mostly Venezuelan migrants entering the country from Mexico on Sunday after a large group broke through Mexican lines to demand asylum in the U.S., only to be thwarted by barbed wire, barriers, and shields. In Swakopmund, the favorites lived up to their billing as the Racing Marathon returned to live action after 2 years of only being presented as a virtual race. Those have been your highlights. Remember to tune in every weekday at 1 p.m. to spend your lunch hour with NMH at 1, catching up on the latest news in Namibia, Africa, and the world, ranging from current affairs, economic news, sports, and international headlines. I am Glenora Shipura. Until next time.